Step 1. Concept. You should decide on a concept first. It's the most important thing to do because your costume design, your composition, pose, and colors all depend on what concept you're choosing. Don't skip this. I explained how I settled on this platformer game concept in my platformer Rui video, so please refer to it if you're curious about the mess in my brain. Step 2. Costume design. I base Emu's costumes on Nintendo consoles because what is the ultimate platformer game? It's me, Otori Mario! I was asked a lot how I design costumes, so I could make a separate video if you guys want it. Please let me know so I don't work for no reason. Thank you! Step 3. Rough sketch. I forgot to hit record until later on in the rough sketch process, so I'm showing you all the ugly sketches I made one by one for now. When I make a lot of those, it usually means I have no idea what I'm doing, which is fine. If this happens to you, don't worry. It's supposed to be ugly since those are just about researching a composition. I usually start by drawing a pose, since the character is the center of my illustrations, but if you're going for a more environment-based card, it might be better to start with sketching the most important element in your composition before the rest. Here, my idea for the composition, which I got while drawing those ugly potato poses, was that Emu is the one building the levels Tsukasa, Nene, and Rui are playing. She's aiming to become a manager, so I think her story is about helping other people achieve their goals. So, she's the one placing the platforms, which means she's helping her friends progress further in the game. Is this Mario Maker? Yes! Shout out to my friend Perry, who recently tiered Haruka Mix3 for the idea of adding Chip Chip Taiyaki. You can't actually see it well in the final drawing, but it's there. Thank you for your help, Perry. Anyway, I don't think I've talked a lot about the composition in my other two videos, so I'll talk about it now. When I think of Super Mario games, I think of the adorable star that makes you invincible. I actually need that in real life. So, I purposefully adjusted the position of Emu's limbs and hair so she would make the shape of a star. I think it's cute. I should have kept that idea for Tsukasa. Yes, I agree. But hey, now Emu is one that shows invincible star, which is adorable. I also did it without realizing, but there's actually some Fibonacci spiral shit happening. If you've never seen this before, it's a really cool composition to use because it's based on math. So it's scientifically proved that it's supposed to look good. This is a simplification. Also, I used fisheye perspective again because I'm stupid. Step 4. Actual sketch. Step 4a. Face. I am working on a Project SEKAI style face tutorial, so I actually studied how Project SEKAI artists draw heads for this illustration. I used the box method to try and understand the head structure this time, but I will explain it in the tutorial, so please look forward to it. Basically what I'm doing is gathering a bunch of references resembling the angle I'm going for, and then drawing the structure over them. The structure doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I don't think this is the goal. I'm just trying to understand how the head works. If you can understand how Project SEKAI head works just by drawing a circle over a reference, that's enough. I personally am not used to using the button. I personally am not used to using the box method, so it appears wonky, but even if I'm using it somewhat incorrectly, it provided the guidelines necessary for me to redraw a Project SEKAI style head without copying exactly or tracing. Step 4B, body. I gathered the few full body emu assets I could find and counted how many heads tall she is. This is a really good technique to get proportions right. I came to the conclusion that emu is somewhere between 5.5 and 6 head tall, and based my body sketch on those proportions. I found it easier to separate the body into multiple parts, so I also found out that the waist is located at the second head starting from the top, the crotch at the third head, and the knees a little lower than the fourth head. After that, I started sketching the basic shapes for the body. I personally find it overwhelming to draw without guidelines, so I like to simplify the shape of the body into simple volumes like boxes and cylinders before drawing the body properly. If you struggle with anatomy, I highly recommend that you do that. After drawing the body, I remembered references exist, so I adjusted what I had drawn according to Project SEKAI cards. Of course, my goal was to understand what I'm doing without copying it exactly, so I also tried to simplify my references so I could use them properly. I followed the same process for the hands, which are among the hardest parts to draw. I gathered every reference of Project SEKAI characters holding a pen or brush and eliminated the ones that aren't close enough to the angle I was going for. Then I was dragged to hell, befriended demons, became a dark knight, found love, adopted children who also happened to be rocks, got divorced, learned how to dance to drown my sorrow, binge-watched Molang on Netflix, and got graduated to the rank of bordering angel before coming back to the human world to draw the stupid hands. I hate drawing feet and shoes, so I hit them as much as I could. Step 4BA, Face Part 2. I changed the face because I felt like Emma's eyes were going to be huge and misplaced. Then I did something terrifying and gave Emma insomnia. I'm sorry, Emma, all I was trying to do was to draw the shape of the irises properly. And for some reason we have lost footage again. I can only provide this bit of video I extracted from the Clip Studio time-lapse. To explain further, what I did was to draw a blob, that's the overall shape of the eyes, on multiple references and then redraw it on my own Emma. Doing this provides great guidelines, so if you're not used to drawing line art, I recommend it. Step 4C, Hair. I recommend that you start by drawing the hairline so your character doesn't look too bold. Especially if you're going for rather extreme hair dynamism like An6 and MU5 strain cards. Then I started drawing the bangs. I didn't mention it earlier, but originally my MU card was supposed to look like Toya and Luca's An6 cards. I was really surprised by how similar the composition was to what I originally had in mind when the cards dropped. But that also meant I had to change my ideas since I don't want my cards to look too similar to official cards. Still, at least Anne's card provided super cool references for the head shape and the bangs, though I ended up simplifying Emu's hair when I redrew it so it was less messy. Lol. Also, hair gets really confusing to draw because of all the lines, so I recommend that you draw colored shapes instead of lines. To do that, you can either use a brush with a border or add a border effect to your entire layer. As I said, my original sketch for the hair was way too messy, so I changed method. I simplified the shapes of Emu's hair in official cards so I could use a simple to detail method. I recommend you do this as much as you can so you don't lose time. Start by drawing a big symbol shape and refine as you go until you're satisfied. That way you can understand the structure of whatever you're drawing more easily and be able to draw it more naturally. Here I simplified Emu's hair in 3 parts. The bangs, which look like a triangle, the side hair, which are on either side of her face and look like long pointy beans, and the back hair, which looks like a rounded triangle. After that, I separated the shapes into smaller ones, and then into even smaller ones. This process makes drawing complex parts a lot easier. You can make adjustments easily with the liquify tool as well. I used the same process for the longer hair strands and ended up with something pretty cute. Step 4D, clothes. This is usually the part where you start hating yourself for 2 reasons. 1. You drew amazing anatomy only to remember that nobody is gonna see it since you designed really loose and oversized clothing. 2. Your design is detailed as and you're too lazy to do whatever the hell those headphones are. I went through the 70 stages of grief with this one. RIP Mopey. As always, I like to color my sketch to check for color balance. It also makes me feel like I'm making more progress than I am actually making after going through a life crisis due to an overcomplicated design. Thank goodness Project SEKAI doesn't design like Hoyoverse. I cried tears of blood when drawing Lumin at Furina. Since I was planning to animate this drawing, I sketched the headphones fully so I could refer to it when drawing the actual drawing. It's important to draw every part fully when animating with Live 2D, which I used. I realized I forgot to draw the bread, so I went through another 70 stages of grief and added it. Then I drew the actual clothes. I have nothing to say about the process. If you have trouble with clothes, make sure to use references. I know I used my own sleeves as references for this drawing since folds are pretty hard to draw. Otherwise, my only advice is to keep in mind tension points, like bend joints, which create folds. For example, a bent elbow will fold the fabric of your shirt. And draw triangle and diamond shapes. Most folds look like triangles, diamonds, and cylinders. Most people overuse the cylinder shape, so I recommend giving triangle and diamond shaped folds a try. I added stitch details while remaining mindful of where the jacket fabric bends so it doesn't look overly two-dimensional. Step 4E, background. I had another life-shattering philosophical crisis when my brain took some vacation and brought my understanding and perspective with it. Please enjoy watching my confusion code in 4K. I added a rainbow because, why not? I gave up on drawing an actual sketch for the background and waited for Brain Sama to come back. As always, I added platforms to help guide the viewer's eyes around Emu. Step 5. Line art and base coloring. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I forgot everything about line weights and coloring my line art, so this is gonna be it for the line art. I just drew over my sketch with black lines and that's it. I was planning on animating this drawing so I can have a big line art folder and a big colors folder. Each part has to be its own layer or folder. For example, the head folder has the line art for the head and the color for the head. I could also merge them into a single layer, which I ended up doing at the very end of this illustration so I could import each part into Live 2D properly. This is my first time using Live 2D, so I didn't separate the parts as well as I should have, but it was good enough for a first try. Since this is gonna take a while and I don't have anything to say, I used this time to say random stuff I wanted to include before but didn't have the time to say. I used the new Project SEKAI card's dimensions. The card size has changed after the game's 3rd anniversary, so I used this version. My canvas is 5040 x 2880 pixels using 300 dpi. You can see that info at the top of the screen. If you're curious about what dpi is, it is the amount of dots per inch. It's only relevant if you're planning to print your work. Since I might want to print my drawings in the future, I always keep this number at 300 dpi. Apparently, a smaller dpi results in bad printing quality, so please make sure your canvas settings are properly set up before you start drawing. I was asked quite a lot if I was planning on drawing Tsukasa's card before his birthday in May 2026. Yes! If possible, I'd like to finish him for the Momo Jump X Wanda Show Connect Live, but if that's not possible, he will be posted for Christmas or New Year's. I'll try my best to finish him before that, even if I can't make it for the Connect Live though. Speaking of, I'm so excited for the Momo Show Live. They're my two favorite units, so I'm really looking forward to it. I wonder who is your favorite character from Momo Jump and Wanda Show? I think mine are Rui and Minori. I also love Emu and Shizuku a lot, but I need more Rui x Momo Jump interactions. I am begging. Steps. Step 6. Background. I begged my brain to come back from vacation and started drawing a proper sketch for the background. I adjusted my perspective ruler and drew buildings. To be honest, this could have been my final background if I had made a few adjustments, but it remained as a sketch. I drew the floors so all buildings would have windows at the same level. I did this because I thought the uneven floor heights looked weird in my Rui card. It was a pain to do, but I think it was worth it. I feel like many people are scared by backgrounds. Yeah, me too. But if you can draw a cube in perspective, then you can draw a city. Essentially, buildings are just boxes with details. So if you're scared to draw architecture because of those details, that's okay. But if you're ready to try, then I recommend that you start with simple shapes like boxes and cylinders, buildings, trees, or any architectural element you may need. Once you have those simple shapes, I feel like details become less overwhelming. Make sure to use references if you're going to refer to a specific type of background. I do think it's a very long process, but it starts being enjoyable if you take breaks and use the simple to detail method. Really, I believe this method makes drawing accessible to everyone, and it's also a lot less overwhelming since you can stop anytime and it would still look good. I drew the mountains in the background to be really tall because the horizon line looked too flat for my liking. I shaded them referencing the Mizuki 6 land cards. I really wish we had more references to draw mountains though. I used the same technique as the buildings to draw the platforms. Then I moved on to the sky. I really like drawing starry skies and the Milky Way. I use a brush to do this and then play with color settings. I drew the sun by simply drawing a cross, duplicating it to have a star shape, then using soft brushes on layers using the Add Glow, Color Dodge, Glow Dodge or Highlight layer modes. Then I just duplicated the sky and mountains, flipped them and set the layer at a lower opacity to draw their reflections on the lake. Then I went back to drawing blocks. Again. I don't have anything to say about it, so let me take this time to remind you to take breaks, drink water, and stretch your body. Your health does matter in art too. Your health matters at all times, so please take care of yourself properly if possible and get the help you deserve if there's something you can't do. Treat yourself with the same kindness which you show to others. And also, I want to remind you that you are just someone who's trying your best to live. That's good enough. That's more than enough, and nobody can ask for more than your best. To color the buildings, all I did was to add a hard light layer on top of them. I color picked the color of the ground, so the buildings are blue. That way, they can look like they're dissolving into the background the closer they are to the horizon line, which helps create depth. This is called atmospheric perspective. It also reduces contrast in the background, which helps keep the focal point strong in the foreground. I drew the windows manually because I'm really weird, like suffering, and on top of it, I'm stupid. Then I erased some of the windows because not everyone keeps every single light on in every single room at dawn. The windows were drawn on an add glow layer and then blurred with the lens blur function, which is what I believe the Project SEKAI artists used in the Tsukasa 6 set. Then I added some red lights. I have no idea what they are, don't ask me. I added more buildings in the far back with a building brush to make it feel like the city is big. I then adjusted the colors of the platforms, which looked too flat. I made the lighting warmer and the shading colder because I thought it looked good that way. Also, I don't do it nearly as much as I should, but checking your drawing on a grayscale is really good. It helps you make sure your drawing has enough contrast to be understandable to the viewer. I was gonna add trees to give more life to the city, but I admittedly don't know how to draw trees, so it looked terrible and I gave up on the idea. Instead, I tried to make it look like vehicles were circulating on the roads, but it also ended up looking really weird, so I left it as is so I could come back to it later. I adjusted the contrast of the platforms. I usually spend a lot of time playing around with saturation, brightness, contrast, and hues because I'm one of those color-obsessed folks and I can't like a drawing if I don't like the colors. Step 7. Lighting and shading. The very first thing I always do when rendering is to add a multiply layer clip to the character and fill it with the color that was picked from the background. Here the background is mostly blue, so I use blue. This helps make the character blend in more with their environment. Usually I would do the lighting first on the whole character, but because it would be troublesome for me to go through hundreds of layers twice, I drew the lighting and shading on each part at the same time. I wanted very bright lighting for this set, so I also made the eyes highlights bright and added a glow effect on the irises with an add glow layer. I hadn't planned the lighting in the sketching phase, so I decided on the spot. There are 3 light sources: the sun with the blue lighting, the stars with a pink lighting, and the cubes Emu is drawing with a yellow lighting. I'm a pretty simple person in terms of shading and lighting. I draw the lighting on the edge or the side that is the most exposed to the light source, and I shade the opposite side. Since I like to add multiple light sources, generally 2 to 3, I don't draw reflected light to avoid making the rendering messy or confusing. However, if you only have one light source, I do recommend that you draw reflected highlights to make your drawing less flat. Overall, I don't think it is a bad idea for you to study how to shade a simple sphere and how to apply the technique to your preferred shading style. Shading the hair was particularly hard for me because of all the separate parts. Making the lighting look cohesive was the hardest, so I edited it later to make it look better. To be honest with you, I was on a very tight deadline with this drawing, so rather than making it look good, I was focusing on making it on time. I hope it still looks okay. As always, I recommend avoiding soft brushes when shading in the Project SEKAI art style. I don't think they use any at all. They do, however, blur some shadows slightly and erase lighting with soft erasers. So I only use the basic hard pen brush, a blur tool, a hard eraser, and a soft eraser to render Emu. Another thing that was hard when shading was to avoid cast shadows. I usually love drawing cast shadows, but because I was going to animate Emu, I knew that having moving parts but still cast shadows was going to look weird. I know I could have animated the shadows too, but it looked intimidating for someone like me who had only ever opened Live 2D once before and closed it 5 minutes later. If anyone is interested in my boring backend life, I actually shaded this hand after my own. It was a very ridiculous scene where I held my phone flashlight over my hand and tried to understand whatever the hell was happening on my knuckles while drawing it. I forgot to separate the layers by color on the jacket, so all my colors were on a single layer. In order to shade this mess, I used a multiply layer clipped to it and shaded everything with a light grayish blue color, and then later on I adjusted the colors. By the way, I apologize for showing you this emu who's missing limbs 80% of the time. This was unfortunately required for me to shade every part properly so the fight would be ready to be animated. I also shaded the clothing folds using triangular shapes for the most part. I hope this convinces you to give it a try. Shading the back of the hair is like shading any other part of the hair, but with another extra step. Project SEKAI usually shades hair with 3 colors and a highlight color. So you have base color, shading color 1, shading color 2, and highlights. Shading color 2 is only used at the back of the hair for a character with shorter hair. What you're watching me do right now is me adjusting the color of the shading. Since I used the light grayish blue for the whole shading, it made the overall drawing look muddy. I recommend using a wide range of hues when shading if you feel like your drawing looks muddy. Also, take it as a rule of thumb, but shading of colored illustration with black or gray usually makes the drawing look rather muddy. There are cases where this is okay and even voluntary. One example would be the Persona series. However, Project SEKAI artists don't do that, so unless this is your concept, I wouldn't recommend it. Step 8. Foreground, effects, and final adjustments. First thing first, I had no idea what I was doing while making the box Emo's drawing. So I just tested a bunch of different layer modes until it looked good. I added a question mark to the boxes, which are definitely not inspired by Mario. I added a blue outline so it would be clearer to understand despite the already busy background. Then I tried to draw that cheap taiyaki nobody noticed, but I really like the idea. Thank you, Perry, for lending me your genius. Then I was lazy and just copy-pasted a second box. I drew a rainbow. It was cute, but I didn't like how it went off canvas because it could distract the viewer's eyes away from the focal point in the drawing, so I reversed it, and I think it looks even cooler this way. I didn't like how the sky looked with the lens blur, so I used a regular Gaussian blur instead for the background. I shaded the eyes again because they looked too flat to me. Then I spent some time remaking the lighting of the hair, which looked incoherent. And I added more lighting on the clothes so it would look less flat. I also added hair highlights. If you're having trouble with shaping them, drawing guidelines helps. Here I wanted them to follow a curve, so I drew that curve to guide me. I added effects after that, but unfortunately it didn't record for some reason. This is what the effects folder look like merged all together though. I added the triangles I also added to my other two drawings and recorded them. I also added some sort of cute bokeh effect along with cute little stars. I also adjusted the colors with layer blending modes such as overlay and color dodge in order to make the drawing more vibrant. And to finish it all off, I duplicated the effects folder, merged it all together, then put it on add glow mode to make the effects look better. And this is what the final drawing looks like. Step 9. Live 2D. I didn't record the actual process because I'm a complete beginner and I don't think it would be interesting to anyone to watch me stare at my screen in sheer confusion for hours. But basically, this is what I did. So, I have my project file. I have no idea how Live 2D works, so I'm not gonna explain that. I'm just gonna try to show you what I did. So select everything, create auto mesh. I know people on Live 2D tutorials recommend not to use auto mesh and do your own art mesh. I suck, so I did it anyway. I'm gonna set it on heavy deformation, and I think oh, it didn't crash. That's a win. Anyway, did it not crash? Anyway, so you have your art meshes created, and if I want to animate, say, the hair or the head turning slightly, I'm gonna select everything that's every layer that's on the head. So the eye thing, the face, all the hair, the headphones. I'm also gonna select those two longer hair strands, the back hair, and I think that's not about it. I also need this back hair, this shit. Oh, it did not select that. Okay, this shit, and I need to manually select the hair. I'm gonna do this here. Unselected. So once I have all that selected, I think what I did was create the rotation deformer. I did not change the names because I don't know what I'm doing. I created this shit. Then I'm gonna select any angle. I'm gonna select Z because why not? You want to create keyframes. I usually added 3 because I don't know what I'm doing. So that's the original state, like this, 0 is the original state. I'm gonna click this, and then here you may have, oh, the highlights didn't get in, no! Anyway. I'm gonna add the highlights. With my rotation deformer. Then key points. And here you have a slight rotation. And then here you have a slight rotation the other way. And basically that's it. So yeah. And then you have to do this for every single part. So let's say I wanna have those bangs sway slightly when the head is rotating a little bit. I should have selected the neck. Oh well. So when you want the bangs to sway slightly, you have to select each bang manually. So say you want to move this one, I'm gonna create the keyframes, what I did was use the deform path edits tool, and I would add this to have a deform path, which will help you with deforming. So here the head sways on this side, so I will want to deform the bangs to go this way, because why not? And so when the head sways this way, the bang sways the other way. And on the contrary, And on the contrary, when the head sways the other way, I'm gonna have the bangs go up. And you have a bold spot, and you know what? That's okay. Anyway, this is what I did for the whole thing. Then once you have this shit, you can start animating. So I'm gonna drag this here, I think. And this is what I had to do. I forgot. I wanna save 8. Why? I don't know what I did. Anyway, you wanna select this. I'm gonna make it. I think it was for. What is? Okay, and 180. And then you wanna basically move your thing to match the. I don't really care about how perfect this is right now. I'm sleepy. So you have your animation timeline, and what you want to do essentially is like, I think I did for angle Z, so you can see each sways. So let's say at 0, 0, I want my angle to be at -30, which is the like extreme for the head to go towards this shoulder. And maybe at 1 second, I want my head to go the other way, so I'm gonna wait. And then you have an animation of your head slowly, well, not so slowly, going this way, and then you can set it to go back fast. Let's say here. Oops. Let's say here, and it goes back this way, and then maybe I want it to maybe I want to break her neck, so I'm gonna do this. Wait, and then you watch your masterpiece. Yeah, that's basically what I did.